Hello. I would like to welcome you all to the OU Youth Professionals Network webcast, specifically on innovative fundraising programs for the youth. Rabbi Einhorn will be presenting today. A little bit about Rabbi Einhorn. He is the head rabbi at Westside Institutional Synagogue. And in addition to being the head rabbi at Westside Institutional Synagogue, he's also the creator and founder of the synagogue consulting initiative called WINGS, We Inspire New Growth Synagogue. We are really excited to have him here today and presenting on this topic. So without further ado, I would like to call upon Rabbi Einhorn. And an additional comment is that if anybody has questions throughout the webcast, please feel free to email Pazornik, P-A-Z-O-R-N-I-C-K-P @ou.org.
Hi, how are you? It's good to be back. I thank you for taking the time out to listen to this live, and for those who are listening to it later on, I thank you as well for sharing and engaging in the conversation, particularly relating to our youth and youth groups in our synagogues and fundraising for those youth groups. Now, any questions you have, write them down. You'll get a chance to ask all of them. You can even send them in to me afterwards if they hit you later on. But the topic I was asked to speak about was innovative fundraising ideas for youth groups. Now, we first have to start with a basic realization, and this is just intuitive. Raising money for children causes are by far the easiest thing you can do in the shul. It's not like raising money for a broken boiler or broken something which isn't as, attractive for somebody to raise money for. But when you're talking about for the kids, doing something for the children, which symbolizes the future of your synagogue, the response is immediate. And the response is immediate if you do it the right way. If you do it with some of the techniques I'm suggesting and some of the techniques I'm sure that you can suggest, if this is done right, there's no reason why you can't have a fully functioning and fully developed youth group the way you dreamed it to be. Okay, so we'll go in with that premise that raising money for the youth, fundraising for youth development and youth programs is one of the easiest pieces of the entire shul puzzle that you could raise money for. People love helping children. Now, sometimes I do hear resistance. I hear shuls that'll tell me, listen, we're a senior shul. We don't have many kids, most of them left. So why should we spend anything on a youth group? Now, I've already given a webinar on this. You can go online. I forgot the exact title. Penny, do you remember the title? I think it was something, how to engage parents in your youth groups. There was that one, how to get parents involved, and also I gave them the importance of having a youth group. In those two webinars is more than enough information, I think, to convince your shul of the importance of why any shul should have it. No matter what their demographic is, it's important. The future is your youth. Unless a shul's content with saying, we want to just fizzle out in another 30 years, end this project, okay, that's a different story. But the average shul isn't thinking that, and if they want to think of a sustained model and a model that can continue, leave a legacy, then it's going to be with the youth. It's going to be with building and developing a sophisticated youth program. Okay. I find there are three reasons, basically, why it's difficult to get money for your youth groups. Okay? Reason number one is, as we just said, synagogue argues that it doesn't have many children, so there's no need to support. It's just not that important. See, that's an easy argument to refute. That argument you can refute because there is so much research that's been done on this topic. There is no doubt that the future viability of an institution, of a house of worship, is connected to the children. I've suggested on occasion the book written by Thomas Rainer, which speaks about how people come to church in his context, but come to synagogues basically because they're children, because their children are there, because the children are going to be taken care of. It's a logical idea. It's easy to sell to anyone. The concept that the future is the children. So I won't belabor that point anymore, but I think that piece is easy. When a synagogue tells you that, well, we don't have many children and it's not that important, I think it's pretty easy to argue, to make the case why the future is the children. The future is dependent on who's coming after us. The other two reasons why you might not be able to get money for youth groups, I think, is you just don't have a plan. You're hoping that money will just come to you. Well, the shul doesn't throw a lot of money at us, and well, we can't find the money to do this event. Well, the question I usually ask back is, well, what plan do you have in place? Have you come up with a systemized plan and a management plan of how you are going to get that money? What's your plan? And by the way, having a plan means to balance your fundraising that you do over the course of a year. You don't just stack it all in one time, but you space it out. You're going to need money for different events. You're going to need money for different programs, and there's got to be a plan. Fundraising plans are very sophisticated. Some of them take documents of 50, 60 pages of coming up with a proper fundraising plan. Now, I'm not advocating that for your youth group. You don't need that. But you still need a plan. And by the way, when people see that you have a plan and you have a system and you have a method of how you're going to go about raising that money, you're able to create a cadence, a rhythm by which you can continue and follow that pattern every year. If your plan worked on year X, it might work again the next year, and you could just follow that plan. So developing a plan for raising money doesn't need to be something you need to do every single month to figure out. You can map out one plan that takes place over the course of a year and repeat it each and every year. And by the way, a little trick is each year, you try to move your donors, the people that gave you, a little further each year. For example, if Fred Schwartz gives you $300 for a youth program in 2011. What you could do the following year, come the same time, say, "Hi, Mr. Schwartz, how are you? You helped us out with our program last year. We had that kids, carnival. Well, we're doing it again this year and really appreciate your support. Can we get you to go from 300 to 360? Can we move you from 300 to 320? You've done a couple things, by the way. You've made the assumption that he's going to be giving you again, which is great because a lot of times he'll then say, wait a second, they're assuming I'm giving again. For him, the debate becomes whether he'll shift to the new number. But in all likelihood, he will agree to the same number because that's not up for debate right now. What's up for debate is the question of whether the next amount, the next increment, the 360 as opposed to just the 300. So that's good in general with any of your donors, to find out if you can move them to a different price point in the next year and say, you gave 300 last year. We really appreciate it. Can you do X this year? Okay, which means you already assume they're going to give you the basic 300 they gave you the year before. It works like a charm. It's really helpful. It makes a psychological assumption already in the donor, and they begin assuming it as well each and every year. So you need a plan. Balance it over the year. As we said before, another reason people don't give is because they'll say the shul doesn't have that many kids or the kids aren't really that important. The third resistance you may find when trying to raise money for your youth groups is you as a fundraiser or you as the one who's leading your youth groups, whatever capacity you're listening in on as, you're not seen as or perceived as responsible. Well, kids are raising money for kids events, or you're supervising kids. You're going to raise money from a budget that we have that goes to the synagogue building, that goes to paying staff, that goes to paying clergy. Why should I trust you with the check that I'm going to give? You need to show fiscal responsibility. And what that means is that when you come over to someone to ask if they could support an event, you need to already have evidence of why your events work, how they're run efficiently. If you run a well-planned event, when kids come to your events and parents drop off children at your events and they see this is a well-run event, you create a culture of responsibility. And when parents feel that you are being responsible with their children, they're more willing to give over money. They feel as though they can give you a larger amount because look what you do. Look at the return on the amount they're giving you. If it's run and gun, again, no plan, no proper approach, the money is being used haphazardly, you'll get mediocre amounts each and every time. So you got to first get through these three hurdles. The three hurdles are, number one, a shul's culture, a shul's concept is that the future or children are not important. Selling people on a future or in the value of kids, I think, is very easy. I mean, you don't have to think too hard about compelling arguments of why focusing on children is important. Number two, no plan. You need to have a plan. You need to have a plan. It must be balanced. There must be an approach. How you're going to do it, who's going to do it, who's going to ask, when do you ask each and every year, what's the system you ask, how you input the information. It all needs a plan. Just like your event has a plan. Who's going to run the cotton candy booth? Just like those have plans, so too your fundraising must have a plan. You can't just expect the money to fall from the sky. And number three, we said just sometimes you're not perceived as being responsible. You need to show that you're responsible. By the way, seems like a case of chicken before the egg, because how do you show you're responsible if you can't get the money yet? So I would say you should start off with setting a pattern of responsibility by anchoring your events in initial bursts of freebies. What that means is focus on a great weekly email, putting together a bulletin or a weekly email. That's free. If you could do that, are basically free. And if that's free, and if you show sophistication in how you're involving the children through the email, you already create some responsibility. Run events on the Shabbos groups that don't cost money. I mean, listen, 80% of the events, by the way, you are going to run aren't going to cost much money. Run some quality events that don't cost money, but show that you are a responsible group leader, that show you're a responsible committee chair for the youth groups, whichever capacity you fill. But you need to show that responsibility and where that money's going to use. And if you could show how that money's going to be used, people are more likely to give to you. Okay, those are the 3 reasons people might not give you money. I think all 3 reasons could be overcome quite easily. If done the right way, with chachma, with wisdom, with insight, they could be overcome and you can move forward. Now, I could spend the next time with you giving you creative ideas. And I'm going to give you some ideas which I think are creative, which I think are cute. But to be honest, I'm a firm believer that the money for the serious youth programming that you want to do is not going to come from those cute ideas. It's not going to come from the mom and pop car wash event that you're running in the back of Shul. You'll get money from that, and that could generate some revenue for yourself. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about serious fundraising, serious funds for sophisticated youth group planning, creating the best youth group anywhere for miles, you're going to need something which is a little more than those fun programs. And I'm going to give you them because everybody loves running them, and they're great. Besides the money they bring in, they empower the kids to feel like they're making a difference within the shul. So they are valuable, and we will get to them. But I think primarily the fundraising and the innovation as far as youth programming fundraising is that it needs to be approached like fundraising at the most sophisticated levels, like fundraising at the highest level of fundraising. Comes through relationships. For example, there's one thing I call the 90-degree shift. The 90-degree shift means, for example, it's a change in attitude. Instead of thinking about what you feel is important, try to put yourself in your potential donor's shoes. Put yourself in their shoes and think about what do they value, what's important to them. Think about how they perceive the shul from their eyes. Try to get to know them. When you get to know them, you'll see they're people who perceive the shul as being stale, stagnant, cold. Well, if therefore you know that you could sell them on a program that's alive, that's passionate, that could get children interested, could inspire, you have that person's heart. If you meet someone who's worried that the money is being bled everywhere, we're just spending and spending and spending without regard, well, it means that the approach you're going to sell them on or the way you're going to fundraise to them has to incorporate a certain level of responsibility and value of where each dollar is going. You need to know who you're raising from. It means shifting your vantage point. It means stop looking from your own eyes. Well, why shouldn't that person give for this? It's a great event. I would give to it. Stop looking from your own vantage point. We each have our own perspectives. So I would switch perspectives. I would move away from my own perspective and try to get to know the person who you're going to be making the ask from, who you're going to be asking money from. That's one method. Number 2, I would say make it easy. Besides the 90-degree shift, which I just showed you, I would say make it easy for them. Okay, what that means is people want to give to children. They want to make these events fun. They want to make these events easy. But you have to make sure that your shul is doing it in a way that makes their donations easy. If they have to then fill out a form, if they have to, you're making them find somewhere on the website where to click and put the money, you're taking away too many steps. There's too many steps involved. Make it easy for them to give. And when they do, send them thank you letters right away. Don't waste a moment. The responsibility and the care of you going out of your way for right away to send that thank you note. If they get home the next day and already in their mailbox is a thank you letter. Or you return a donor's phone call when they call you if they have a question. Listen to their suggestions, even if you disagree with it. Hear them out. In every suggestion, even bad ones, there's a kernel of it that can be used or adapted in a positive way. When your donors feel they're listened to, when they feel their life is being made easy by giving to you, giving to you makes their life easy, then they'll keep giving. It creates that connection where they'll keep giving, they'll keep giving, they'll keep giving. So that's the second suggestion I would give as far as innovative fundraising. Number 3, I don't know why more youth groups don't do this, but it seems to me a strong way to raise money. Engage, engage, engage. What that means, incorporate the adults in your synagogue into the youth groups. Have them give a talk to the kids on something they're an expert on, whether it's a community helper. Someone could fly a helicopter for Hatzalah or whatever it is. Have them come talk about what it is and how they learned to fly a helicopter. Someone may have served in the army. Tell stories of what it was like to serve in the army and to be there, and to sit with their friends, waiting at war. Whatever it is, whatever will work for your particular youth groups. Tap into the talent that's in the shul yourself. Once you connect and engage the adults into the youth groups, once they're engaged, as opposed to passively just dropping off their children, if they're engaged, they feel an ownership of it, and they want it to succeed. They're going to want it to go well. So if you engage your adult, if you have people speak in the shul, come by, ask them. We're trying to get different adults every other week to come sit in and observe and give feedback, give advice, what else they would do. Get their advice, get their feedback. You then turn them into partners with you in building the youth program. And now you're not raising money out of a vacuum. You're coming to them as people who have a vested interest besides their children, but also because they're actively involved in the development of your youth group. And therefore, because of that, it makes it much easier to be able to raise money. These are three powerful ways which will get you a much larger amount, and with much less effort, by the way, than having to put together some kamikaze crazy event that takes months to pull together, when at the end you may end up in the green by just a couple hundred. This kind of fundraising that's built through relationships, looking at it, number one, from their perspective. Number two, make life as easy as possible for your giver. Number three, engaging the adults into your youth groups are so easy. They benefit you on many levels besides the money, and then when the money does come, it comes on a much bigger scale. Number four, tell a story. At the end of the day, you are telling a story. You're storytellers. When you're selling, fundraisers are storytellers par excellence. That's what you do. The story has to be the best of what your mission is in words. If your mission is to inspire these children so that coming to shul for them is a treat, is an experience, if that's your mission with these groups, figure out what your mission is. Feel it, own it. If it's not something you buy into, if it's not something that you can feel, then you can't sell the mission. But if you feel the mission of these groups is to give these children a healthy outlet by which they can experience and enjoy Judaism, if you could convey that to the people you're raising money from with passion through a story, sharing with them a story about what some of the kids did and what some of the kids told you and how they came up to you or what they told another person or a chesed they did because of a program you ran. If you could tell your mission as a story, that's another powerful key to fundraising, okay? Tell the story of what's going on in your groups. Don't go over and say, we need money. Mrs. Finkelstein, we need money because we're doing a movie night. Okay, you might get $5. But if you go over to Miss Finkelstein and you explain to her the beautiful things that are going on in these youth groups and say, we want to take it to the next level because we're really teaching our children how to be a mensch in society. We're helping our children enjoy coming to shul because they've done these amazing chesed projects. They built Noah's Teva, Noah's Ark. They've done this event. They've done that event. When you sell it as a story, instead of raising money for the movie night, you're raising money for the cause. You're raising money for the idea. I think when you go at it with that route, much more powerful, much more powerful. So stop with these tchotchke fundraising ideas. It'll get you a few dollars. Again, I'll give you the fun stuff later on. They're out there. You could do them. They're great events. But we're talking really taking your fundraising for your youth groups to the next level. Think about it from your donor's perspective. Look at them and see what they're like. Are they like kids? Are they like little kids? A lot of these adults that you talk to are like little kids. That's all they are. And you see it from their perspective and you get them engaged that way. Number two, make it easy for them. Number three, engage the adults. Get them involved. Have them tell stories. Have them come to your groups. Have them chaperone events. Have them give you feedback and advice. Have them edit your weekly emails. That's how you also get them involved. That's a good one, by the way. Have them edit the stuff, the material that's being sent out from the youth groups. Number five, I think the other key here for relationship-based fundraising for your youth groups is ultimately creating disturbance. What I mean is as follows. I once heard a great person say that you're not a salesperson. That's not what you're doing. You're not selling youth groups. You're not selling sponsorship to events. Ultimately, what you need to be doing is inducing a state. When you are inducing a state among those who are potential givers, you then create the mechanism by which great fundraising can truly happen. You're inducing a certain state. Okay, let me walk you through that, what it means to induce a state. Everybody buys something at the end of the day because of some emotional need or some basic need, something that's not being met. People buy a superior phone, a more expensive phone, because they feel that the one they currently have is not meeting X or Y. Now, it could be it's not meeting social status X or Y, or it could be it's not meeting efficiency and productivity need X or Y. And the advertisement on the company makes you feel as though without this phone, you are lengthening the amount of time it takes you to get to Poughkeepsie on a vacation. Whatever it is, they're showing you how buying their item is helping you fill a need that exists within you. Now, whenever you're raising, and this works across the board for fundraising altogether, and specifically works well when you're dealing with youth, number one, you find a deep want or interest. You turn to your prospective donor, and you find within them a deep want or interest as it relates to your youth groups. Now, for some people, it could be they have a deep want or interest to see their youth interested in coming to davening, in being part of shul, in knowing how to open up a siddur. They want to know that their child knows how to use that siddur. That's a deep want or interest. Step two is the disturbance that's created. I would say the screen, the snow screen, which makes them feel uncomfortable that without these events happening, that goal can't be achieved. Without these Shabbos groups running most effectively, the kids relate to Saturday, to Shabbos, as just the annoying day of the week, the day when they have to sort of wait for their parents to be done with shul, where they can't do X and Y, and they can't do activity Z or B. They can't do this. They can't drive. They can't do all the things they may want to do. That's the disturbance. Without these youth groups, you run the risk of the children in our community having a negative perception of Shabbos. So you create that disturbance within the person you're trying to fundraise from. And then comes the key, step three. Step three is showing how your program, your concepts, remember, you need a plan. You're showing them how your program, your concepts can actually help them, could heal this pain, this fear that they have. How? Because every second Shabbos of the month, we're going through a davening curriculum. Or every third Shabbos of the month, we're doing activities and games like building a Noah's Ark out of candy or whatever it is, so that they create this powerful association that shul is amazing, coming to shul is great. You have to, step one, find the deep want or interest. Step two, disturb them. And number three, show them to how to heal, how your idea, your concept of youth groups is going to heal that disturbance. There's basically two drivers of human behavior, and if you know this, you understand how to fundraise. There's a desire to avoid pain and a desire to gain pleasure. People will do far more to avoid pain than to gain pleasure. So on one hand, you could look at your youth groups as a way for nachas. Nachas, you have tons of nachas from the kids to see them smiling and laughing in groups. Or pleasure, you have them taken care of during shul, you don't have to worry about them. Yes, that'll go far. But what will go even farther is when they understand that youth groups are so much bigger. They're not just babysitting services. They actually are there to help the parent in a very functional way. And it could be in a way, as far as I said before, enjoying shul. But the pain avoidance is that their kids actually have something to do. And they don't weigh on the parent all day as far as trying to find them and fill the entire day with activities, but the shul is providing that service. The shul is providing that service. If the person you're going to is undisturbed, they won't bite. They'll give you a little bit, but they won't really give that amount. There needs to be a disturbance that's created and a way for you to solve it with these youth groups. So these are advanced fundraising ideas that are used by top companies. They're used at the highest levels of fundraising. The innovative part of all this is I think they should be applied here for the children and for youth groups. They should be applied when trying to fundraise in our youth groups. They should be applied when trying to raise for the most simple events. I think that we go out of the way to create these very sophisticated and very difficult events and fundraisers, which create extreme challenges. And at the end of the day, relationship-based fundraising is the key. All right, let me give you, I promised you some creative methods of fundraising, and here's a few of them. You could try them out. This will bring in a steady source of revenue. And by the way, you could use both. You could use these creative means, and at those events, anchor a connection where you then approach and get to know some of your parents, get them involved, and you can make the big ask for future events. Number one, what about local monopoly? What that means is you can go online, you can create monopoly boards that you can edit what each location is quite easily. You could do it with paper and pen if you wanted to, but now you could do all that stuff online. You get yourself empty monopoly boards where you could fill in the spaces. Now, what spaces do you fill them in with? You fill them in with vendors from the local community. They become the monopoly board. So it becomes your community's monopoly board. Instead of, the traditional Boardwalk Park Place monopoly board, or someone brought in the Israel monopoly board, or the baseball team monopoly board, you now create a monopoly board by selling spots around to local vendors. And the vendors will love this idea. They'll love this idea because it means they're now in the eyes of all the children and all the parents watching the children. And you can decide how many of these boards you want to create and how much you want to sell each spot for. But as you sell each spot, it's advertising that'll be in the youth groups for the entire year or for years to come. So you really have a really precious commodity that you're selling. Your boardwalk could be replaced with a local pizza shop. Even the mikveh will buy a spot on the monopoly board. I think any basic service will take a spot on the monopoly board. It'll be a great treat to give the children that education of their and see the community in this way on a board, and it raises a ton of money. Another event you could try, I've tried before, is called Parsha Golf. What that means is, imagine a miniature golf course, but instead you're running it throughout your entire shul, whether one in front of the shul, another course in the middle of the lobby, going upstairs to the ballroom, going in the back, each course going on and on, but they're created and structured around the Parsha, and they're created the week or two before by the children in collaboration. They take some white poster board and they make, let's say someone has Parshas Lech Lecha, so their Parsha will be, Avram walking with his family, and they cut a hole in it, and that'll be the hole for where the golf ball will go through. And they create each one, coming up with creative ways. Each kid will come up and be given their own concept as to how to create a Parsha-related miniature golf course. You then invite out all the parents for a fee to come play. And by the way, every kid's parent is going to sign up, and they're going to come with the money to play in their kid's golf course. And you have each parent run through this self-created miniature golf course, and you run it as a community fundraiser. Golf, everybody loves a golfing event, but this is a miniature golfing event created by the children running through your synagogue. It's powerful, it's amazing, and it's engaging. Another concept that's been used a lot, and it's almost like the Monopoly, but it really goes well, and everyone loves playing a role. It's discount cards. They've gotten so sophisticated now online with as far as discount cards. You go to squidoo.com. They have some really great options for discount cards. SQUIDOO, I believe. And you go online, you get these gift cards, and you can get you get local vendors in the community giving 10% off, 5% off, 7% off. They know that everyone's going to buy these cards. You sell each card for $20. You sell them to your entire membership. Everyone take a card. Fundraiser for the youth, for the children. Remember, create that rapport, create that tension that by supporting the youth, they're really supporting their future. You buy into that emotion. You sell those gift cards. You sell the discount cards. It goes a long way. There's something out there I saw called green magic plants. I think it's a great idea to bring into shuls. Green magic plants is if you water it enough, after a certain point, instead of just growing a plant, a note begins to grow. A message, an inspirational message. And a lot of these green plants online, if you go find green magic plants online, you could put your own messages. And you could use psukim from the Torah. You could use inspirational ideas from Pirkei Avos. You sell green magic plants, sell them in honor of the youth groups, and every family in the shul buys one of the plants. You pick the price point. But it's another creative idea. There's no end to creative ideas. You can Google creative fundraising ideas, and you'll find hundreds of them. There's hundreds of them. There's no end. I still think to go back to the methods of the relationship-based fundraising, those are your strongest. What I do want to lay out is, though, the different categories and type of events you can do to get your mind thinking. One category is called the category of auctions, where you auction things. Whether it's a silent auction, whether it's a raffle, whether it's a Chinese auction, whether it's students for service, whether it's a dessert auction, bake sale, that's the category of auctions. That's one category to get you thinking. There's what we call pledges. Bowl-a-thon, pledge per pin, or a walk-a-thon, pledge per mile. I saw one shul, a president did a weight loss pledge. For every pound he loses, everyone has to give X amount of money. There's a bike-a-thon, rock-a-thon, using rocking chairs, trash-a-thon, how many bags of trash they throw out. You could do these thons for anything, really anything, and they're great ways to raise money. Besides those, you also have dinners. Right? You could do a after shul kiddush. That's where you actually, think about this now, what you could do is have after shul a kiddush just for the children. But you use that event to bring in sponsors to sponsor the future kiddushes for the kids. But you raise far more than the value of how much it puts to put out crackers and some cholent or whatever you're going to give to the kids. But you actually have fundraisers for the kids' kiddushes. People would love to give to that. It's tongue-in-cheek, it's fun, it's whimsical. I see a lot of people wanting to be sponsors on a kids' kiddush. It's a great thing to be a sponsor on a kids' kiddush in honor of children in the shul. You could have cafe night. You could have pancake breakfast. You could have potato or salad bars. This is the dinners, what I would call the dinner section of ideas. So you have auctions, pledges, and you have dinners. And then there's just what we call donations. Donations for giving for shalach manas, donations for pledges, basically pledges from a congregant. There's pledges for scholarships to sponsor youth in the shul. You could actually sell sponsorships. You could sponsor one kid. You could sponsor another kid and have a certain fee that you want to say, can you sponsor one of the kids in our youth groups? A lot of times shuls have people that are unaffiliated who visit the shul. You could have other parents sponsor the attendance of those kids for this concept of outreach and reaching out to the community. Because you could be double selling. You're selling the sponsorship not just for the youth, but you're also selling sponsorship for outreach. So those are your basic categories. You then could mix it up and get creative in each one. You just lay those categories out. You lay donations, auction, dinner. You lay them out on a piece of paper, and you try to think of creative ways of doing each one. There's no end to those ideas. Those, you could do them all year, from here till the next 45, 50 years. You could always have new ideas. They're innovative, they're unique, but at the end of the day, the bulk of your money is going to come from the relationship-based fundraising. There's no doubt about that. All the research is pointing to that. More than your car wash events and all those events that you're going to do, cook a Hamantaschen, whatever it is, bake a Hamantaschen. At the end of the day, the relationships you make, going one-to-one, seeing things from the perspective of the congregant, engaging them in your groups, bringing them on a committee to help you run your groups, get feedback from them, all those ideas, all those ways of doing it, making it easy for them, telling a great story, creating disturbance, as we spoke about. Those are the way you get your parents involved. Those are the way you get the real funds to take your youth groups to the next level. Okay, I hope you appreciate and found some of this helpful. You can incorporate some of this at home. If you have any really wacky idea, let us know your feedback. We'd love to hear it, even though I'm still recommending relationship-based fundraising. Okay, we have some questions that are being sent over, and please feel free to ask questions. We have some time. One of the questions we got was from Iowa. An example of a program that will show responsibility. An example of a program that will show responsibility. Well, I said before, I think that the email is fantastic. When you do a set email of what's going on, update, and lets them know the full schedule. Scheduling looks efficient. Scheduling looks responsible. That's just great. A structured program that has a schedule as when you're going to play game X, game Y, when snack time is. You post it in front of the room. That looks responsible. Those are things that are responsible. If someone is missing from youth groups one Shabbos, you call the home, you speak to the parents. That shows responsibility. Okay, I hope I answered your question. Another question we got here was from a shul in California. It says, in an older shul, no young kids, how do we get the programming started? How do we get the programming started? I think, first of all, you need to educate your congregation or whoever is there to make decisions as far as budgeting, to educate them or to sit with them to discuss the importance of the youth. Once you've crossed that hurdle, and let's say now, okay, we bought into it. Listen, youth director Sam and Jack, we agree. We're in. We want to support. Where do we begin? Where do we begin with the programming? If you're really starting with no youth, you could really start, in a sense, start with some class, some babysitting. Offer babysitting for Saturday morning services, if that's the kind of audience you're attracting. If you're attracting people who come from Orthodox backgrounds already, who just live a little further on the outside, you need to come up with great promotional material at the beginning. You need to get some kids in that door. And I do a free offering at the beginning. The first 30 kids that comes to groups over the next 2 weeks, the first 30 kids gets a gifts receipt to one of the stores in the area. I'd give freebies away right at the beginning. I heard one shul was offering tickets to sporting events. That's gutsy. That's big. That's a bold move. I don't know if every shul could do that. Most shuls, I imagine, can't. But you get the idea. Sometimes you got to do things to bring the kids in the door, and that could be offering them special incentives, just like anything else. The next question we got here, where is this from? This is from a shul in Pennsylvania. How could I get sitters or playground donated? How could I get sitters or playgrounds donated? Well, the truth is, I always say the best place to get sitters donated are from other shuls. A lot of times shuls are updating, certainly the bigger shuls are updating their sitter collection by getting new siddurim, especially with the new, Koren Sachs and the Rav sitter here the OU has been putting out. A lot of shuls have been replacing the sitters they did have before. And a lot of times the bindings have wear and tear, and the shuls want to get rid of and update to a different sitter. I think by calling some of the older, more established shuls, you'll actually find that they have plenty of shuls there. Plenty of sitters there. A playground donated. I think at the end of the day, with as far as a playground, there's a great emotional attachment to a playground. That's an easy one for relationship-based fundraising. But I have an idea here for a playground. What you could do is one of the pieces of the playground could be a wall. And what you do is each person you go up to is building another piece of that wall, whether it's brick that you're going to put together that has the signature in crayon or whatever it is of the person giving the money. But slowly but surely they're building. They see the visual of how their money is building, so to speak, another brick in the wall of the playground. When you do something like that and you feel a great communal feeling that each person who's giving whatever amount it takes is creating another brick or another step in whatever you have in the playground, that's very powerful. That's a very powerful way to do it. We got another question here. East Brunswick. How do you overcome bored feelings that youth fundraising will interfere with shul fundraising? Yes, youth fundraising will interfere with shul fundraising. If you're doing it really well, you're going to take away donors the shul would use for other projects. I do recommend that anyone who's going to be doing fundraising for this, you want to be on board with your rabbi. You want to be on board with your president and whoever's in charge. Creating a system where you're fighting the very system you're working for and working with is not healthy. And then a lot of this becomes dishonest, trying to find secret and private ways of raising money. The first step is to have a meeting and to passionately convey the importance of what you're doing. Ask yourself, did you mention it to them in passing or did you just explain your frustration? That's not going to work. You need to sit down and one by one, whether it's to the rabbi first or to the president first, explain, this is my plan. This is my fundraising plan. This is why I believe we need to do it. If you explain your plan as opposed to having some vague concept. You see, when it's a vague concept, then it gets alarming. Well, you're going to approach the same three rich people that we always approach. No, you need your plan. If you design your plan, then they can come back and say, okay, I understand. I love your passion. I love your commitment. How about this? Leave this person out of it. Try it with this, that, X, Y, and Z. They'll have feedback for you. And by the way, those on the board who are giving you pushback that they don't want you fundraising from person X or Y, you could then say, how about you? Can you give me money for the youth program? No one's going to want to help you in this. No one's going to want to do this with you if you don't have a plan, if you're not passionate about why it's important, if you don't concretely write the steps of how you're going to do this, you're not going to find much support. You're just going to get frustrated. So you have to go through the steps to explain why it's important, why it's necessary to the shul. And by the way, you might be in a position to also then further explain that if your youth groups did build up, there'd be a greater source of revenue for the shul in the long term. Ultimately, if there are more kids now coming to shul, it means there's more parents. If there's more parents coming to shul, it's more membership, and that's more people to raise money from. So it's win-win. The shul's not going to be hurt by your youth groups being successful and thriving. I think that's what you need to let them know. By you having the greatest youth group in the country, there's no way the shul can go down the drain. That's for sure. Einhorn guarantee. You make your youth groups thrive, you make it successful, the shul will be successful. If someone has an example of a shul that folded because the youth groups were too good, let me know. I'd love to hear it. The shuls are always nervous. They're not going to have money. If they do it, give it to the kids. Tell me a shul that put money into kids that therefore their whole shul fell apart. You won't find an example. Okay, I thank you. Any more questions, you could always submit them to me, wings@ou.org. We appreciate your tuning in. Take care.